Hey, RetconRaider here, and welcome back to Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader. As today, with the duplicity behind us, we now prepare for the duplicity ahead of us. Calcazar awaits, or possibly another trial, who's to say? Just a stress, I have never actually played this segment, so I'm really just kind of playing it by ear. But, you know, we'll keep taking it one step at a time. Starting with this console, which requires a slight adjustment on our loadout. There we go. Let's see what we've got.
This Explorator is blessed with multifunctionality.
Scarlet forbidding signs blaze on the vid screen. Someone has placed a seal of silence on the cogitator. Okay, I mean, that doesn't really tell us much, but sure. Obviously, Calcazar's people would be in full lockdown right now. Let's poke around a bit. We'll check over this way first. Xeno lore. Librarian specs. One of the images stands out amongst the rest. This likely used to be the symbol of an ancient Xenos dynasty. The Yakmet, no doubt. I don't think we have a name for the actual trapped overlord. Eliminate. Oh, okay. I mean, yeah. If I am parsing that correctly, that was basically just Xavier seeing approaching Necron and ordering his men to shoot them, which they clearly did because they're dead right there in front of us. Not exactly blowing me away with these reveals.
Is there money to be made?
Incandescent Storm. A very high-end plasma rifle. Each attack on this plasma gun has a separate cooldown. All of this plasma gun's attack actions can be used in a single turn. So up to 3 potential attacks per round. Interesting. As well as Cruciatum Litany. Each of the wearer's single attacks gains plus 10% damage for each negative effect on the target. That would be more appealing if we had a DOT-based character on hand at the moment, which we really kind of don't. I mean, technically, I suppose Heinrichs and Ulfar both dabble with their Soulfire and Flamethrower DOTs, respectively. But, you know, someone like Kibbles is really more debuff-focused. I'm not actually sure if this does more damage, like more raw damage, than the ancient plasma rifle, but it does seem like it's an overall improvement, so yeah, we'll give it a shot for the, like, 1 or 2 fights we have left ahead of us. What better time to start experimenting with our gear loadouts than the final boss fights? Something down below. Looks like a dead destroyer. So we're obviously meant to go this way and then loop back around. Yeah, we can see more skill checks down below. So here... Let me just... Oh, no, here's something. The tech blight has barely affected this bridge. but almost completely devastated the Xeno structures below. So I do think, after the duplicity incident last time around,
I always have a backup plan.
this tech blight is a symptom of the escaping Star God, as opposed to part of Kalkazar's plan. Yeah, see, he's clearly taking a much more mechanically proactive approach to controlling the Necron incursion. Though that's not to say that he's not necessarily responsible for the Star God escaping. Rosary of Defense grants a small chance to ignore damage for Vanguards, but that is the last thing we really need to worry about with Abby. Dude already ignores most damage. But yeah, based on everything we've observed here thus far, I think it's likely that whatever Kalkazar is trying to do, force the yoke upon the trapped Star God, that is compromising the containment, which in turn is allowing the Star God to exert more and more influence on the physical realm around it, and has also awakened the dormant Necrons, who have now emerged to try to stop it, with Kalkazar, of course, putting up barriers in front of them to try to keep them away, whilst he continues trying to deploy the yoke. One sec, just trying to boost our Xenos lore a little higher. That works. Just gotta make sure I remember to swap our dodge amulet back in after. As soon as you touch the obelisk, ancient Xeno symbols appear in your mind, forming the words, "Open the pocket repository?" Sure, why not? Singer of Fearsome Sagas. High-end power axe. Adeptus Astartes only. Attacks by this axe deal additional damage equal to 5% of the target's maximum wounds. Can only trigger once per enemy per round. I mean, it's not bad. I just still kind of prefer the knife. Rallying Boots. Whenever the wearer's ally uses following, that ally deals 33% more damage with their next attack for each ally within a 2-cell radius around the wearer. Confusing. I think we'll pass. Mind Assemble Circlet. Whenever the wearer uses a psychic power, they can trigger one of the following. Reduce AP cost and Veil Degradation. Power used as normal. Increased degradation, but reset cooldown. I mean, we do technically have one Psyker in our current crew, but Heinrichs hasn't really run into much issue with that sort of thing. That's more for someone like Adira, or possibly a rogue trader Psyker. I mean, it's definitely useful, just not really for us. What else we got? Lord Inquisitor, we are progressing according to plan. Our troops have already reached the target. Okay, so that's obviously Kalkazar's first approach on the Shard Prison. We also have this gun here. We saw it active just a second ago, so we know that that's a live threat. Which means we should probably go this way. Though we also had a thing up here. Right, the the destroyed destroyer. Unnatural energies torment the Xeno's dead body, destroying and reconstructing it over and over. Oh, shoot, we have a turret on this side, too. Though they only drew focus to the one on this side.
I always keep my options open.
And we can see there's another walkway that cuts behind it. So this one might be safe to approach. Generator. Nope. Okay, it is not. It is not safe to approach. But we already have. Thank you, Wolfar. Yeah, so obviously we were supposed to shoot the generator to disable it. It lit up as we got close, but at that point it was too late to stop short. Thankfully, we still got it done pretty quick. But yeah, that really just kind of blended into the background. Looks more like a speaker from this side than a generator. Only really noticed it once it lit up. But we can now get behind the other. And we also saw there was a chest next to it as well. The destructive web of the tech blight is spreading along the walls of the crypt. I will say I'm a little unclear on the exact timing of this incursion, because Tanakia seemed to imply that they'd been here for a while. Like the full duration of the campaign, because her part in the story was essentially over before Theodora had even died. You know, that's like pre-prologue stuff. Oh, right, but Kalkazar only just recovered the yoke from... Really? More cargo? I do not know why we're receiving this right at the end of the game, but sure, we'll take it. But yeah. Okay, it does make sense. Kalkazar's entire plan hinged on him having the yoke to presumably try to control this god. There's our exit. But he didn't get that until right towards the end of the campaign, after the showdown on Euphrates 2. So now he is finally able to get the last stage into motion, which is likely what triggered the outbreak and the sudden Necron resistance, etc. Speaking of which, let's make sure we're combat ready. But yes, that does also track with what Tanakia said. Everything was pretty quiet and normal right up until Kalkazar went down here for the final stage of the plan. Then, everything went sideways, and she was eviscerated. Alright, okay. It's been a long time coming, but let's go confront Kalkazar. This might be it. Okay, no immediate event triggered. Leaves us free to roam a bit. Let's have a quick peek around. Right, okay, so these guys are all just waiting for us to go talk to Kalkazar. Let's see if we can circle the whole chamber, see if we can pick up any other potential clues for our final conversation. And keep an eye out for any familiar faces. I am still half expecting to see Tervantius here somewhere. Nothing so far, just a lot of open space. Kind of feels like a battle arena, which does make sense. Or possibly a puzzle, like running around trying to hit things in the right order, or disable certain things, or whatnot. Here we go. A low hum emanates from the massive machine that combines the might of the Imperium with the taint of xenotech. Sure. Oh. The Tesseract prison vibrates restlessly, barely containing the power within. Okay, not much of note. Oh, yeah, clearly marked as combatants. I see that you did not heed my warnings, Valin. Your decision to come here in spite of them may have consequences. But we still have a chance to turn it to everyone's advantage, if your lordship listens to me very carefully. With all due respect to you, Lord Inquisitor, I shall ask you to refrain from any further threats directed toward the blessed rogue trader, lest you face repercussions from me. How courteous of you to warn me, Master Wersurian. I will remember your words. Master Van Kalox, I am pleased to see you. How was your journey? Illuminating, Lord Inquisitor. Heinrich's tone would have frozen anyone else solid, but not Kalkazar. Lord Inquisitor, I don't suppose you'd be willing to tell me what's going on here. Exactly what my duty dictates. Saving the Imperium. Isn't it obvious? Saving the Imperium, right, which you're going to do with that. We call it a shard, and yes, as you have noted quite aptly, it is the reason I am here. This construct contains an ancient, or rather, a pre-ancient being of cosmic power. They were called the Catan. The entity is currently trying to escape, and I am here to collar it. Kalkazar nods at the giant device, whose design clearly points to it having been brought into the crypt from outside. A Catan shard. Nice to finally have a proper name. So what exactly do we know about these things? Because I've got to say, Kalkazar, from where I'm standing, what you're trying to do seems downright apocalyptic. It is a specimen of an ancient predator race, devourers of pulsars who feasted on star systems. A reality itself bent to their power, but many millennia ago, an ancient Xenos race managed to defeat them, shatter them into pieces, and lock them away in prisons like the one you see before you. Oh, eaters of stars and benders of reality, and you think you can control that? Do you mean to say that a human is not capable of such a feat? But I am not just a human. I am an instrument of the Emperor's will, one of many, and the Imperium is omnipotent. If I were to fail, another would follow in my footsteps. That is how humanity makes the impossible possible, with the hands of particular people, in particular circumstances. Your skepticism is unwarranted. Sure. And this alien god, you're looking to control it for the sake of the Imperium? I feel like there's a lot of folks back home who might object to that, but please elaborate. Over my years of service, I have come to realize that the main problem that humanity faces in this war is the imbalance in power. Our opponents are not races or nations, but incomprehensible monsters. And it is high time we acquired one of our own. My yoke will bind this creature and make it a chained guard, serving the Emperor. That is not the full extent of my vision. There are other shards similar to this one, scattered across the galaxy. I plan on seeking them out and confining them all inside the yoke. Each conquered monstrosity will bolster our defenses. You mind if I ask some questions? Given the circumstances of our meeting, I do not see why I should hide anything. I seriously doubt you will share this information with anyone else. For one reason or another. Now see, Calcazar, when you say things like that, it immediately makes me trust you less. And that trust was already pretty thin. Alright, let's start with the basics. I've already got a pretty good general idea of how this all ended up happening, but how exactly did you find this shard? Thanks to your predecessor. I arrived in the Expanse at the call of the Explorator fleet to deal with Archmagos Amarnot's heresy. But I quickly came to the realization that the Coronis Expanse's problems ran much deeper than tech heresy. Unprecedented piracy running wild, blatant smuggling of Xeno artifacts, willful and impetuous rogue traders, and growing threat of the ruinous powers. All this in a region that the Drukhari consider their domain. Frankly, I considered purging the entire Expanse. It would have been much easier to burn down this whole tangle of threats and corruption. But the web of spies that I had woven presented me with much more interesting and radical solutions. While investigating Amarnot's connections, I turned my eye to Theodora von Valancius, who ultimately gave me the shard. Oh, she gave it to you. Well, I suppose that's certainly one way to put it. I'd love to know more details about how that played out. Theodora's instincts were uncanny. She spent decades hunting for a key that could open the dimensional gate, as if she knew that there was something incredible waiting for her on the other side. Her ladyship was lucky enough to discover the shard during one of her expeditions, a trophy that was too much for her to handle. Archmagos Amarnot studied it on Theodora's behalf, creating weapons in exchange for access to the dangerous relic. But their research was too primitive and unambitious compared to the true power contained inside the shard. I had one of my own acolytes, Tanakia, send her spies to Theodora. They infiltrated the rogue trader's retinue, earned their trust, and reported to me about this magnificent object. The rest was trivial. I seized Epitaph and laid down the conditions of our further coexistence. She was wise enough to concede defeat with dignity. I commenced Operation Precious Sentinel. I left a garrison on Epitaph, took the key to the dimensional gate from Theodora, sealed the gate, and started the creation of the Yoke. I kept Theodora and her heirs in my sights, just in case. Not long before her death, I assigned Heinrichs to her, and ordered her to rendezvous with him on Rycat Minoris. But your lordship inherited him instead. I admit I wasn't aware of you. Theodora managed to keep her secret heir up her sleeve. Heinrich's lip curls. It is unfortunate that I was not privy to all the details of this plan. Gritting his teeth, Abelard says quietly, in the old days, House von Valancius would have declared war over something like this, and fought until the offender was dead. So what exactly was the plan with the Space Wolves? I needed a remarkably strong force to keep my Xenos allies in check. The Emperor's Angels were just the weapon I was looking for, except, considering the sensitive nature of my operation, I couldn't very well risk requesting aid from my allies in the Death Watch, could I? And then I remembered an old debt owed to me by a Space Wolves great company. So I decided to call in a favor. They were an asset at first. The wolves helped me close the dimensional gate by overwhelming its security systems. I tasked them with hunting the Xenos, condemned by Euremeris. But eventually they started prying, and that was unacceptable. I could control Thorvald by giving him more tempting targets. But the baleful Howl Pack... They raided an outpost where my agents had been meeting with the Drukhari. The pack took prisoners, but lost the esteemed brother Ulfar. I hoped they would give their all to the search, but instead the wolves forced this system's coordinates out of the captives, and came crashing down on my head. They had no gate to transport them. They used nothing but their warp engines. Thankfully, they realized their situation too late, so Tanakia managed to neutralize them. Ulfar stares coldly at him, the deadly frost of Fenris crackling in his voice as he speaks. You will pay for this, Xavier Kalkazar. Know that I will have my blood vengeance. I will have your death. Yeah, the fact that he admitted that right in front of Ulfar is certainly an interesting choice. Would a Lord Inquisitor outrank Space Marines? Okay, tell me about the yoke. It is a containment device similar to this one, except better. The yoke was devised by the brightest minds of two races, using the ancient wisdom of a long-gone Xeno civilization. A prison capable not only of holding the Catan Shard, but also of controlling it while releasing fractions of its being. An instrument of obedience and destruction. A masterpiece whose creation required immense effort. It was made on Euphrates II. I captured Amonat's student, Axiomantha, and she passed all of her mentor's drafts to me. And the one overseeing the process was none other than your acquaintance, the tech priest, Cubist Delphine. His fall was regrettable. It seems that the unorthodox, daring things he did at my behest drove him to break his vows and sink into heresy. Oh, wow, okay, so that was your fault too. I did not pick up on that, but you know what? It certainly does track. Which means the issue we faced on 3 of our main 4 planets actually tracks back to Kalkazar, his alliance with the Drukhari, and now also the corruption of Cubist Delphine. Also interesting that he didn't seem to recognize Axiomantha as a part of Amarnat, so that does feel like it was a blind spot in his grand plan. Though he did also collect Brass Whisper, so I don't know. But the human mind could never have comprehended the shard alone, and thus I appealed to the inhuman mind. I struck a deal with the Drukhari.
Theft of sacraments and secrets of the Adeptus Mechanicus, registered. Inciting a devout tech priest to commit heresy, registered. Blasphemous merging of sacred technologies with forbidden ones, registered. Further transgression registration discontinued.
The drill on Pascal's Mechadendrite screeches in fury. The Drukhari, yeah, I guessed as much. You were Tervantius' secret partner. Alas, the operation demanded it. Through the agents of one of my acolytes, Emelina, I contacted Archon Euremeris and made a pact. I gave her access to the technologies contained within this relic, and destroyed her rivals in the Cabal. She would relay information on their raids to my spies, and I would solve the problem. In exchange, her homunculus, Tervantius, forged the yoke for me. Of course, I did not let him near the shard itself, but rather set up a laboratory for him on Quetzaltemir. It was safer that way. All the pieces were contributing to my plan, but none had enough information to comprehend the entirety of it. Right, okay, so I guess he's not here. I guess we actually did kill him back on Quetzaltemir then. which is good. I mean, it would have been nice to kill him again, but yeah, it wouldn't have made much sense for Kalkazar to bring him this close to the ultimate reality-distorting weapon he's hoping to harness. So I guess the item he actually stole from Tervantius was the yoke itself, before moving it to Euphrates too. Heinrichs cringes at Kalkazar's words. You disposed of Emelina like unwanted rubbish, like waste material, after all her years of faithful service to the Golden Throne. Unfortunately, I had to send Emelina away and remove her from the board. A shrewd woman of principle. I used to value those qualities of hers, but suddenly they started to get in the way of my plan. It would have been safer to eliminate her before she could figure out what was going on, but I must have grown miserly over the years and was loath to part with a good agent. Or perhaps I was simply being sentimental. You know, I suppose this would explain the crude copies of Necron technology I saw back in Tervantius' lab. They were using it as part of their disjunction weapon, which really does kind of highlight just how dangerous this game you were playing really was. What do you think would have happened if they'd gotten their hands on the real thing? Many things, I imagine. It is one of the most complicated and perfect creations of a race, much older than the Drukhari. It is no mere object, but a treasure trove of technology. A wise master could uncover many secrets simply by observing it. Oh man, I really wish they gave us more nuance on our potential responses to that. Like, obviously, at its most basic, Valen has no issue with working with Xenos. He's done it on multiple occasions. I mean, we've got a pretty solid alliance with the Eldari, even right now, and he's also not adverse to using xenotechnology, though he has shied away from chaos at least. It's just Kalkazar's actual methods and choice of allies that Val really kind of objects to. Well, Kalkazar, I can't say I'm very happy with how this all played out, but I suppose I can at least understand why you thought it was all necessary. Trust me, your lordship, the threat of the alien pales in comparison to that posed by the ruinous powers. Your Empress could plunder 1,000 worlds, but she is no Uralon the Cruel. She was as great a danger to her own kin as she was to the Imperium. The disruption she caused among the Drukhari was only to our benefit. She intended to trigger a powerful disjunction in Camorra, thereby destroying her rivals and elevating her own cabal in the process. Knowing full well how precarious her grand plan was, I made no attempt to talk her out of it. With a little luck, we wouldn't have need worry about Camorra's influence. You know, I just realized it's also his fault we got kidnapped. It was a dark day when you dropped from under the tail of your rotten-wombed mother, you loathsome traitor. While we were fighting to exterminate the Xenos, you were busy carousing with them. Had I known sooner, I would have ripped your pitch-black heart right out of your chest. I readily believe that. Since we are being so candid, I must note that you proved to be a much less convenient tool than I had anticipated.
This new information about a pact combined with the astro observation data collected in this star system resolves the inconsistencies identified earlier. Unit Xavier Kalkazar stands accused of stealing the astrographic records of the Cognizance fleet.
I am amazed by your analytical prowess. Yes, I needed stars to feed the shard. The Cabal of the Reaving Tempest could steal them and bring them here, but it was imperative to preserve the exact energy parameters, so as not to trigger the object's premature detonation. I procured the necessary information on suitable stars from the Explorator Fleet's Data Scriptorium.
registering a Category 1 blasphemy. Unit Xavier Calcazar is hereby sentenced to intravital dissection and study. Upon the cessation of vital functions, the unit's remains must be disposed of in disgrace.
I mean, let's hold off on that just yet, Pask, but I do feel like we're starting to kind of move that way. So if I'm understanding this right, Calcazar, the issues of not just my worlds, but also the worlds of the other neighboring protectorates, Rykad, Santiel's Pride, that's all on you. Your partnership with the Drukhari has gotten millions, maybe even billions, killed. Well noted. Yes, I acted as their executioner, as regrettable as those losses were. However, to overestimate their importance to the Imperium would have been folly. Every single day, humanity pays a far more terrible price, and that must be brought to an end. Sure. And then, once you'd gotten what you wanted from the Drukhari, you left them to their fate. Namely, me, since I'm the one who actually had to do the heavy lifting there. That does seem to be a bit of a recurring pattern, both with your former allies and the damage you've caused. There was no need for them, seeing as the yoke was almost complete and the situation was escalating out of control. Theodora was dead, the cult of the Final Dawn had reared its head and was preparing to strike, and Euremerus had forgotten her place. She was putting forward too many elimination requests, and when I told her to curb her appetite, she retaliated. The theft of the Rykad star was timed to occur when Master Van Kalox would be on the planet. The Archon wanted to rob me of one of my agents and send a message. Which explains the seeming coordination between the Drukhari and the cult, despite them otherwise seeming to never work together. What? Rykad's son vanished because of me? I mean, I wouldn't go that far, Heinrichs. If anyone's to blame, I'd say it's Euremerus and your boss here. It was their little spat that actually doomed Rykadi. You were just caught in the middle. I still fail to see the connection between the disappearing star and the cult of the Final Dawn. How could the Xenos catalyze the fulfillment of the archenemy's prophecy? And then, the Coronis Expanse was engulfed in flame. I had to rush the operation and declare sector-wide martial law. The webway gate that Euremerus' warriors had been using was destroyed, and the facility on Trimmier razed. I evacuated the half of the yoke that Travantius had completed, but was too late to retrieve the second half from Euphrates, too. Right, well, I mean, both the destruction of the gate and the destruction of the lab on Trimmier, that was us. Though, to be fair, we were dealing with the consequences of his actions at the time. Also, I guess that does clarify, the yoke was developed in two parts, one on Trimmier, one on Euphrates too. So the item he stole from Travantius was half the yoke. Cubis Delphine revealed to Uralon the Cruel where he should strike, and that almost spelt the end of Operation Precious Sentinel. I appreciated your efforts in resolving this problem. In fact, you turned out to be much more useful than Theodora ever was. I mean, yeah, it could have been Cubis Delphine, I suppose, but he did also have a shard of Amernaut. He had Demence, the voice of paranoia. The initial experiments, though, they did take place on Kiaba Gamma, before Calcazar split things off to Euphrates II and Trimmier. So started with Cubis, but then switched off to redundant backup plans once Cubis became a liability. The interplay with Brass Whisper, though, really kind of muddies the waters there. I guess a lot of it comes down to whether or not Brass Whisper actually shared Amernaut's true nature with Calcazar during her time as part of his retinue. Honestly, it's kind of weird that she was part of his retinue at all, considering... Well, no. Pascal did mention that Brass Whisper was initially sent as a spy or traitor or saboteur, but that the Amarnot Collective sort of brought her over before she then clearly had second thoughts again afterwards, after they had developed Eschatos. But that does not tell us whether or not she subsequently explained the nature of Amarnot to Kalkazar, so it does still kind of feel like that was his big blind spot, the main blind spot that started causing his plan to sort of fall apart. The cult's main involvement in the story really does feel like it ultimately was to complicate his plan. Cubus and Immense on Kiava Gamma, the cult going after Abel in Raikadi, and then of course the final attack on Euphrates too. Though he did also have Conrad in the mix, and he knew about the spies. I see. You have come so far in pursuit of answers, Valen. It would be too cruel to leave your curiosity unsatisfied. Well, I appreciate that at least. It certainly does add some context to much of what I had already deduced on my own. And given what's now taking place here, I assume your plan is once again gone somewhat awry? You've controlled this place for the better part of the past year or so I can't imagine the Necrons have been attacking you the entire time. Not at all. Operation Precious Sentinel is in its final stages. The increase in Xenos activity is a vexing yet trivial development in the grand scheme of things. They were supposed to guard the device, but they slept through the intrusion, and only the Catan Shard's emanations could make them stir. Theodora's research destabilized the Shard's prison, and my project only made it worse. Whenever particles of the Catan Shard's energy seep out, many curious phenomena occur. The destruction of the crypt, the warped reality. When I tame the monster, I will order it to stop disrupting the laws of the universe. Oh, just like that. And that brings us to the most interesting part of our conversation. You know my plan, so now I want to know yours. Will you admit that I am in the right and join me in this undeniably ambitious act? Or will you try to stop me? I will be upfront with you. If it is the latter, I will be forced to remove you. But I am sure you realize that already. That's the second time you have threatened the Lord Captain. And here it is, what I have to assume is the pivotal campaign-ending decision. 3 possible options. Try to talk him down, outright refuse, or agree. Which, man, is kind of tough because, like I said before, at its most basic core conceptual level, it is something that Valen, at least beginning of campaign Valen, would have definitely entertained, prior to learning a lot of hard lessons about the dangers of chaos and, to a lesser extent, xenotech. Now, though, he is definitely a bit more wary, but also at the same time, he just does not approve of Kalkazar's methods. And to be blunt, I don't know if we really trust Kalkazar either, because even by his own admission, he basically threw every single one of his followers under the bus the second they became too much of an inconvenience. So there is zero guarantee that he wouldn't just end up turning on us after our temporary alliance, assuming his plan even works in the first place. If anything, his history actually indicates that there's a much stronger chance he would turn on us to cover his tracks, to consolidate power, for any number of other reasons. I mean, he killed or abandoned a number of allies simply based on the possibility they might become too inconvenient. Plus, obviously there's the whole issue of how the rest of the Imperium would actually react to a Lord Inquisitor suddenly turning up with an alien god on a leash, again, assuming it even works. Though I suppose there is the possibility that we could potentially preemptively betray him halfway through, get the yoke on, and then turn on him. Steal the prize back, much as he stole it from Theodora in the first place. Though that, of course, is also a pretty risky play. You know, they might not even give us the option, and that would leave a lot of our companions pretty unhappy. Pascal and Ulfar at the very least. I am going to have to think on this one. And you know, we're pushing time anyway, so let's hit the pause button here. I'm going to go make lunch and think on this for a bit. And we will pick up here next time as we settle this Catan business. See you then. Oh, and special thanks to the Raiders, the fine folks who help make these videos possible, including but not limited to Eerie V23, Revenant, Alois, Arrow Bowman, Dragon Matrix 7, Drakiith, EgonAlter, Exsellsior, Gottlieb, James Trimmier, Lady Shayna, Mark Giemza, RandomPassrby, RobbyB, Triphoppenskip, and Valinrook. Thanks for your support, guys. That said, if you'd also like to help support the channel, then feel free to push the buttons that do the things. Trust me, it does make a difference. Or you could even check out the PayPal, the Patreon, the Nexus GG, or the YouTube memberships. Links are in the description.
This Explorer tool is blessed with multifunctionality.